Hey everybody, today let's take a quick updated look at the Wisconsin U.S. Senate election. So there's some news the other day, here it is. Mike Gallagher, he's in the U.S. House. He's not going to run for that U.S. Senate seat and challenge incumbent Tammy Baldwin. Gallagher's been touted as probably the best chance to go up against Baldwin, but he's passing on a run and he's going to stay in the House. He gives some reasons down here if you want to read this article, but he's going to focus on China, yada yada yada. Also it says down here Gallagher will not support Donald Trump in 2024. So how strong would Gallagher actually be? Probably strong enough, but if he's outright not going to support Trump next year, that's obviously going to be a little bit of a problem for the base. Let's jump over to Wikipedia and take a look at this race. So Tammy Baldwin, she's the incumbent Democrat. She's going to run for a third term. Back in 2018, that was the blue wave. There wasn't really any contest. She won by double digits, but it's Wisconsin. There's potential for a competitive race. So where are we at with the Republicans? Well, down here, we've got the candidates that have publicly expressed interest. First is David Clarke. Some of you might remember Clarke. He was a longtime sheriff of Milwaukee County, and he was a Democrat, but he ended up having a lot of clashes, but eventually came out and supported Donald Trump and a lot of things on the Republican side. Clarke is definitely going to be viewed as the most controversial. There's no question about that. If he actually does run, that's likely to be a major problem in the general election. Now, you can get on Clarke's Wikipedia page if you need a refresher as to his background, but he was in office 2002 to 2017. And I'm sure with someone like Clarke, if I were to read through his entire Wikipedia page, there's probably some mischaracterizations on here, but I'm not going to go through where he stands in all the issues. Let's take a look at his electoral history. So way back in 2002, he won that Democratic primary, 59% of the vote. Since it's Milwaukee County, Republicans have no chance. He got 74% in the general. 4 years later, in 2006, he had a competitive primary. He won it by about a 54 to 46 margin, and then again in the general, no contest. 4 years after that, he had another competitive primary. He did a little bit better this time, about 57 to 43. This time in the general, he cleared 80%. Yet again, 4 years later, he ran again, and he had another very competitive primary. He only won by 4% in a nail-biter, and then in the general, he didn't even face a Republican. He also did try to run for Milwaukee mayor in 2004. He got in third place in that Democratic primary. But for me, this electoral history stands out. He's winning as a Democrat in a very blue county, but he repeatedly faces competitive primaries, and he's managed to narrowly come out ahead. Now, I would guess if he ran one more time in 2018, by that time, he had much more national media exposure, and he probably would have been defeated in a primary. So that's a little bit about David Clarke. Let's take a look at the other candidates. Eric Hovde, he ran in 2012. He did get in second place in that Republican primary, so he has experience doing this, but at this point, he's probably not going to be that strong of a candidate. There's another minor candidate here, Scott Mayer. I don't really know much about him. Apparently he's interested in this race. But the other major candidate here is Tom Tiffany, U.S. Rep from the 7th District. That's the Northwest District. Tiffany's been in there only a few years, but he's viewed as one of the more conservative members. That's probably going to help him in a primary, and he doesn't have the heavy baggage of David Clarke, so he would probably be more competitive in a general election. Now, Tiffany has less charisma. He's less colorful than David Clarke, so if he were to go up against Clarke, Clarke is going to have an advantage in a primary. Now, there's other potential candidates here. Notable names like Sean Duffy, Rebecca Clayfish, Reince Priebus. He's even on here. I don't think he would have much of a chance. Clayfish is very establishment. She lost in the last governor's race in that Republican primary, so she's damaged goods. Sean Duffy, I think, would be stronger than Clayfish, but he's been out of office for a little bit, and I don't know how well he would do with the base at this point. And then we've got declined candidates Mike Gallagher, Brian Stile, and Governor Scott Walker. Now, we do have a recent poll out here from PPP. This is just for Republican primary voters, and David Clarke is the front runner. 40% to Mike Gallagher's 20%, and he already declined to run. Now, there's still a bunch undecided, and of course, now there's a shakeup in the race, given Gallagher is not going to run. But let's look a little bit more at this Republican primary poll. The first question, 93% disapprove of Joe Biden's performance, 65% favorable for Ron DeSantis. Over here, we've got 69% favorable for Donald Trump. In the Republican primary for president, Trump is leading 41 to DeSantis' 25. Just between Trump and DeSantis, it does narrow up to 43 to 39. So that is a little bit notable. But down here, back to the Senate race, David Clarke has a 56% favorable rating, only 8% unfavorable. favorable. And the other candidates on here, Mike Gallagher, Eric Hovde, Tom Tiffany, the percentages of not sure, they increase a bunch over David Clarke. So now that Gallagher is out, the other candidates are going to have to spend some time to get their name recognition up. So this is just one poll, and even though it's new, it's already outdated because Gallagher, he's not even going to run. So where does this leave us? Well, clearly the Republican side is up in the air. We're going to have to see what happens with that. But in the general election, my own rating is leans Democrat. Cook and Sabato also have it at leans. Inside Elections has it at Battleground. I do think this could absolutely be competitive. Baldwin is the incumbent. She's not a weak incumbent, so she's going to start out with an advantage. Now, if David Clarke ends up becoming the nominee for the Republicans, I think this would become likely for the Democrats. I think he just has too much baggage. He used to be a Democrat. There would be endless news coverage and smears, questions he would have to answer, even though he would fire up the base in a primary. I think it would be another case of the GOP flop in the general election. So if you want the Republicans to win this one, would you rather go down in flames with your ideal candidate, or would you rather potentially win with the less ideal nominee? That's how I see it, and there's plenty of time for things to happen. Maybe Clarke doesn't even run. Maybe Tiffany surges. Maybe a different candidate entirely comes into the picture. It's still early. Things are going to change. Now down here we do have one poll. It's only from a few weeks ago. This was sponsored by the National Republican Senatorial Committee, so keep that in mind. But it did show Baldwin with only a 1% lead, 47 to 46 over Mike Gallagher. And if it's generic Democrat, generic Republican, then the Republican jumps ahead by 4, 46 to 42. And Tammy Baldwin against a generic opponent, Baldwin trails 40 to 43. So that's where we're at on this Wisconsin Senate election. This is going to be a fascinating one to watch. I think it would be an upset if Baldwin loses. But at the same time, if Democrats get complacent and it's a red-leaning national environment, there could be room for an upset. Let's remember Ron Johnson. He just won re-election in 22. He also won re-election in 16. It seemed like he was polarizing. A lot of people didn't like him. There was movement to defeat him, but he just keeps on winning. So I'm open to a lot of different possibilities happening, especially in a swing state like Wisconsin. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about this Wisconsin Senate election? Who is going to be the Republican nominee? Who do you think stands the best chance to defeat Baldwin? And how strong do you think Baldwin is? Let me know down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video.